Hi, my name is Teresa Valentino, and I have a DIY mental health survivor type blog at teresavalentino.com. I got a question from a reader named Sandy who wrote to me at my astrology blog on artanonymous.wordpress.com. And Sandy was talking about therapy. We've been talking about relationships and self image issues and negative ideas from childhood abuse and stuff like that. Excuse me. So, Sandy was saying that because of the kind of childhood abuse that she's experienced, that she finds it difficult to relate to therapists. Like, this is something I've actually discussed with my therapist too. It's like, you know why I'm not a therapist? Because I was so viciously abused. Like, people who are so severely abused, almost as I was, almost never finish high school. Like, people who've been kidnapped as children or trafficked or raped repeatedly, very, very hard for such a person to finish high school. So that's why I'm not a doctor, you know what I mean? Because becoming a doctor, at least in my country, requires a lot of social support and money, neither of which were for me. Other people in my family got those things, not me. So then you have a doctor who, by definition, can't really relate to your problems, right? So you're talking to somebody who can't relate to you on a very fundamental baseline level. You know, as I mentioned in my book, I wrote a book called Dear Jimmy, What a Child Trafficking Survivor Wishes You Knew. And, you know, a lot of times therapists just have no goddamn idea how to respond to what I'm telling them, okay? They're not equipped for it. They're not prepared for this, because sometimes, like, I have to explain certain things that are in my head. I have to give the therapist layers and layers of context, because anybody who has the resources and the wherewithal to become a therapist, by definition, doesn't understand the world where this kind of shit can even happen. You know what I mean? That's why I'm not a therapist, because I grew up on the planet where you are going to die. And therapists generally grow up on a planet where they are going to live. So, Sandy found that really kind of a stumbling block for wanting to be in therapy, feeling like she can't connect or relate on that human level. And I've heard other people say the same thing. I've heard Michelle Knight go on Dr. Phil and say, you know, I tried therapy and it didn't work for me. Michelle, who's now called Lily Rose, she was kidnapped for like 11 years, like tortured, starved, raped, beaten, just horribly, horribly abused. So it's going to be very difficult for her to find a therapist who has been through that kind of shit, because once you've been kidnapped, it's really hard to work as a therapist later, right? So, what bugged me about Dr. Phil, professional therapist, was that he didn't correct her on that. He didn't say, hey, Michelle, remember when we sent you to that horse ranch where there was a really laid-back woman that was really nice to talk to, and you could just go there and be yourself, and they showed you different ways that you could interact with the horse and feel better about yourself and get some perspective on your life? All of that is therapy. Therapy, McTherapy, okay? But I'm talking basically about talk therapy. I feel like anybody who's even considered watching my channel needs to be in talk therapy, period, okay? The step one on DIY mental health is getting professional help. Failure to invoke an actual medical professional to assist you is a failure to grasp the severity of your own situation, okay? What happened, if you've been raped as a child, that is an extreme trauma similar to being hit by a car. If you would have been hit by a car, they probably would take you for treatment, right? And then if you walked funny for the rest of your life, or if you had to be in physical therapy every week for the rest of your life, that would be kind of understandable because of the trauma that you experienced. So mental and physical trauma are not so different, except that we have socially agreed to downplay the severity of emotional and psychological trauma, especially when it's rape related. So, that's just a huge fallacy that the world labors under that makes me kind of want to hang myself, to be honest. I'm not going to, don't feel bad, but, you know, I'm being really honest with you here about how crucial it is. Like, if you have PTSD, people die from PTSD all the dang time, because PTSD just robs you of your ability to live and to survive and to even get it or care or want to on some level. So the therapist You know, you would not need, if you had been hit by a car and you were going to need to work with an orthopedist for the rest of your life, you would not insist on having an orthopedist who had also been hit by a car. That's all there is to it. You are going to that person for their unilateral support. They give, you take. That's all. So the second point that I'd like to make about why to be in therapy, aside from the fact that, you know, what you need from them is not a buddy, okay? And if a good therapist will help you also to establish the ancillary relationships that you need to round out that support system. You don't need them to be your buddy, you need them to be your doctor. And a good therapist will do other things for you. They will give you perspective that you don't have, and a lot of times that's perspective coming from someone who has been loved and sheltered in their life, unlike most of us, like me anyway. So again, that's where you can leverage the benefits of other people living differently than you do, because it gives you an opportunity to observe a new way of thinking and responding. Those people have a very different set of expectations about how things will go, how people will treat them, how the world will operate. Just on a fundamental going forward level, the average therapist has a much better ability to self-advocate, okay, and to just do self-care. So having an ongoing person who kind of has more of what you want in life, okay, is an excellent way to head in that direction yourself. So rather than being annoyed and alienated by the therapist's lack of personal experience in the subject matter, you can really leverage that. Like you can, it's almost like having you can let your inner child have a sleepover party with another kid who has a much better house, okay? And then it gives that kid a much easier way to work through the gaslight, basically, when they get back home to their house and see how stuff is, because they see how other people get treated and they see how other people expect things to go. And then they realize, it's easier to realize that way when people are trying to play with your head. So you do need to be in therapy. You can use, again, you can think of it just like a medical doctor that's helping you with a serious chronic medical issue, which it is. You can use that person as a role model for having higher and better expectations in your life. And a lot of times, a good therapist will also advocate for you and help connect you with other resources that may not have been obvious to you to even think about or request, okay? So because these are people who have better supported and more stable lives pretty much across the board, by definition, they're able to see opportunities that if you had not been so abused, you would be able to see for yourself too, if that makes sense. Like they understand that they have a certain personal worth, and so it automatically occurs to them to ask people to be supportive. And then when you feel challenged to believe that that's actually going to work for you based on your own past history, like with me, then you know you can. That's how you can work through it. That's how you can leverage the very different background of the therapist. So, I hope that I have convinced you to get down with the self-care and get yourself into therapy. What I can tell you is this. I just made another video talking about a medical situation that I have, which I have very grave bad feelings about. And I can tell you, the only thing that keeps me getting out of bed or that I give a shit about is my art. Like I want to do certain creative projects. I want to do my writing and my sewing and whatever. And I like singing songs with toddlers. Other than that, I kind of don't give a shit about anything anymore. And so that is not really worth fighting through something like cancer, as far as I'm concerned. But if I am going to be alive and I am going to survive, really it's art and therapy. That's all I care about. I am working on changing my financial situation by expanding out into book publishing, because I just don't have enough money to get by with. And what I really need to do, I need to have physical therapy. I need to go to a swimming pool. When I have enough money to just do the things that I really would like to do all day, every day, I can promise you it's going to be therapy, therapy, and more therapy. I'm going to do therapy with animals. I'm going to do therapy in the water. I'm going to do therapy with art. I'm going to do so much therapy. I'm going to find new ways to do therapy. I'm going to go to salons and get like a seaweed wrap, because that's a kind of therapy. Any kind of self-care, pampering, positive attention directed towards yourself can be thought of as therapy. But again, to go back to the primary points of this video, I would like you to consider having a medical professional dedicated to your progress as an essential part of getting from A to B. Like having that medical professional dedicated to stabilizing you psychologically and providing you the sort of advocacy and perspective that most of us who were so abused sorely lacked. We lack that kind of leadership and parenting, okay? A therapist is a great way to remediate your poor parenting. So if you have any access to therapy whatsoever, I think it's just a beautiful form of pampering. Again, if you need to do some frog kissing about it, I certainly have done. Not everybody is qualified to work with someone who's traumatized to the extent that I am. Every profession has their C students and their C minus students, but that shouldn't deter you. You should really keep looking until you find the right person. Like, it's really better than Match.com. Once you find somebody that you can work with and things work out, it will be a beautiful part of your life going forward, okay? So again, please get into therapy. Check me out at teresavalentino.com, Teresa Valentino on YouTube. By all means, share my videos and my links if you wouldn't mind, because, hey, not that many people know about me yet, but I'm a pain in the butt. As long as I survive, I'm going to be here talking about stuff, because otherwise it's not worth it. Thank you for listening.